Okay, good morning, everyone. For the first talk, please welcome Martin and his talk about Project TEMPA, Demystifying Tesla's Bluetooth passive entry system. So please give a warm welcome to Martin.
Thank you very much, Guy. And thank you very much to all of you coming to this first talk today. Maybe a very first question, need Tesla owners present? Raise your hand. All right. Who's here to change that? No? All right, so you don't want to have it. But there's a bag of Mozart balls that I brought from Salzburg. So if you have a good question, you get a Mozart ball in exchange. And also stickers are here, just for later on, you know there's something to give. So Trifinite.org used to be a name known in the Bluetooth industry because we founded that group in 2004 and we did a lot of work for the Bluetooth SIG back then. We helped them at testing events and helped vendors with the security of their devices. Back then, these were mostly feature phones. And there's a lot of information on the web page that got renewed. You can look it up yourself. I live in Salzburg, Austria. That's why I brought the Mozart balls. And I'm a regular participant and also sometimes speaker at the C3 since 1998. And also, I'm the author of the app Tesla Radar, which will be part of that presentation. And of course, I also own a Tesla since I needed something to play with. So 2 weeks ago, I think everybody saw that video that got presented by the NCC group. Is Sultan here by chance? Raise your hand. So Sultan was the researcher at NCC Group who presented the exact same thing with the Bluetooth relay attack as I did one day after his press and media attention. So that was a little bit unfortunate. But I'm happy to talk to Sultan and also give him a Mozart ball. So today, I not only want to make a point not to use phone key, but also why you probably should not use your NFC card if you own a Tesla. So Project TEMPA started a few months ago, and it had the goal of investigating the Bluetooth low energy interface used with the phone key system on Tesla Model 3 and Y, but also on the facelift models S and X, so the 2021 plus models. And I estimate that this is about 2 million cars today that could be vulnerable to some of the things I'm going to present today. Of course, identifying tracking vehicles is part of that, exchanging messages via Bluetooth LE will be covered here, and also I will talk about possible vectors. Of course, it's been quite a long research, and some of the things I discovered were fixed or partially fixed by Tesla. The findings I'm presenting today are all reverse engineered from the official Tesla app for Android, which is Kotlin based and really decompiles well to an obfuscated Java code. The research overall, when I started looking up into that whole BLE world with Tesla, that was in June 2019, but my research intensified in June 21 when I discovered it's possible to be in the middle doing a relay attack, and also read, understand the messages being sent. So the phone key, as said, is that little program on your phone that is capable of sending Bluetooth low energy based messages to your car, and of course receive messages from your car and do all the magic that's required to unlock the car, to start the car, and to drive with it. So the idea was pretty good and pretty innovative. So the owner's phone replaces the key fob, so no extra thing to carry around for owners. Pretty nice. Also used in Model Y and the new SX, as said before. And of course, it's very likely to be part of future Tesla models. So I assume the Roadster will have a Bluetooth-based unlock system, since they do not even have door handles, and I saw that in a video. So when you approach the car, the right door will open up, and this is also possible today with the sensors that I already have in the Model 3 and Y. So you can pretty much detect where the unlocking device is, and of course this will be also used for Roadster, I believe. So what are the ways to unlock a Tesla? There's, of course, the phone, but in addition to that, you have these NFC cards. Every owner gets 2 NFC cards that are enrolled in the vehicle, and you can unlock it. And there's also a third opportunity or option to unlock the car. That would be the key fob. The key fob, I believe, is very expensive for what it is. It's 160 euros, and I have one, but as I will talk about that later, this is still research in progress. So what are the means of unlocking? So you can either unlock the car online with the app over the Internet API. Then there's this whole BLE world that uses the VCSEC protocol, and there's an NFC endpoint in the car. Actually, there's 2 of them that enables you to use your NFC card to do basic control. Yeah, as said, owners get 2 whitelisted NFC cards, but there's different form factors sold on the internet. For example, there's a key ring. So I often think there's a lot of Green Lantern fans that are really into that idea of unlocking the car with a ring. The card is held to the driver's side B-pillar or at the middle console. It's a so-called fascia endpoint. It's just where you would put your coffee a little behind it, and that's where this endpoint for the NFC card is. And the NFC card does not support passive entry, so you always have to interact directly, and the car wouldn't unlock once you left it without tapping. Then there's the phone key. It's part of the official app, and as said earlier, it's based on Bluetooth Low Energy, and also for Android is able to do the NFC host emulation and can be used as an NFC card as well. And of course, the phone key and the BLE functionality allows passive entry. So when you leave the car will detect, all right, the device is no longer around, I will lock up. And there's the key fob. Sold extra, also has a Bluetooth low energy device. The hardware is based on ARM Cortex, and it allows passive entry and can be used as a remote control as well, with buttons on it that opens the trunk, the frunk, and the door. And for the US models, you can also use the key fob in order to do the smart summon and have your car back out of a very narrow parking spot, for example. But due to legal reasons, I believe this is not possible in the area where I live, doing that with the key fob. Right. So I was really curious how people that own a Model 3 and Y would unlock their car. So I did a poll on Twitter, which is not representative and is also maybe having a bias, since I was asking users of the Tesla Radar app that were on Twitter are pretty techie, I guess. So 83.7 of the 43 votes said they were using the phone key, and as you see, like 4% the NFC card, the rest the key fob. Right. So how does it work? Smartphone with app finds vehicle, smartphone identifies, so is it the right vehicle I'm going to talk to? Smartphone connects and communicates with the car and does what it is made for. It unlocks the car, it starts, it does it all. So how does that work on a technical level? So the car advertises a generic attribute service via BLE that also comes with a name and two characteristics that are specific to Tesla. The one is called to vehicle and the other one from vehicle, so no secrets there. And also, I believe mainly for the iPhone interoperability, there is an iBeacon structure that is embedded in the manufacturer data that allows the iPhone to uniquely identify the right device without having to do an active connect. And there used to be 4 visible beacons per device, I'm going to say, but per vehicle, and these were called different. I will say that later. So this is the UUID, and there's a major and minor ID also encoded in that iBeacon structure, and these are random values, but more or less unique to a car. So that's just a detail. So the device name is interesting because it has a structure. It always starts out with a capital S, has then 8 bytes encoded in hex, and end with C. As I said earlier, there used to be 4 different beacons per car, and these were ending in D, P, and R. My guess for these characters is like C for center, D for driver side, passenger side, and rear. But nowadays, you see in 99% of all cases only the C in the name. So the other beacons got deactivated or are no longer advertising actively. Right. These 8 bytes in hex, they seemed very random at first, but are unique to a vehicle. And it's always turned on. So it's unique, always turned on, and it's visible to anyone with a BLE radio. So more or less everyone with a smartphone. And I thought at the time, and still do, think that this is a privacy issue. So compare it with the whole discussion about the Apple AirTag, where even the AirTag randomizes its ID, so it's really hard to track if you're not part of the whole Apple ecosystem, so you won't be able to detect the same AirTag. But this is just not the case for Tesla vehicles. They have always the same ID, they won't stop advertising it, everybody can see it. And I was trying to make a point there to Tesla in 2019 and said, see, if somebody had a network of monitors that were looking for Tesla IDs, it would be really easy to track Tesla around that area that is covered by that network. And Tesla acknowledged that and said, all right, we thought about that, but we're not going to change it since there's a lot of license plate cameras around anyways, so there's no point for us changing that. So the license plate argument would work in the US, but wouldn't work in Europe, as it is not allowed to operate a license plate camera there. So that's why this is a null argument. Right. So that's when I started rolling out the Tesla Radar app that does exactly that, what I said. So it's a network of BLE monitors that are looking for Tesla IDs. So first I published that at Chaos Camp in 2019 with no understanding at all about all the inner workings. It's an Android app, it's free, it's crowdsourcing vehicle discovery, and at first it was its intention was to showcase privacy issues, but then I found out if I turned it into a game, the Tesla fan community will love it, and at least 300 permanent users are collecting data, and I think we have a coverage of 5 to 10% of all the Teslas. And of course, it's a valuable data collection for research. And these are some stats, so you can check it out yourself on teslaradar.com. So everybody knows what a win is, and it's a 17-digit code that encodes all the properties of a car. This is not specific to Tesla, but in the case of Tesla, it would allow you to find out the model type, which manufacturing year, a serial number, the battery type, and if it's a left-hand drive or right-hand drive. And of course, for Tesla Radar, it would have been really cool to see what model you just detected there. So that's why I researched in there a little bit further. And I found out by playing around with my own VIN number and hashing it with SHA-1, I found out that a part of that hash would be that 8-byte hex-encoded string that I found in my own Tesla's name. So knowing that, I found it in the obfuscated code that there would be that thing they refer to as a VIN identifier in the comments. And not in the comments, in the log messages actually. And I thought, well, you could brute force it every time you find a new VIN, but that takes a long time. So I decided to create a special rainbow table that takes all the possible VINs from all the different plants and factories. There's a lot of estimation work, a lot of guessing, and have all these VINs pre-calculated and have that kind of easy lookup method, which is now used in Tesla Radar in order to tell whether it's a Model 3, Model Y, X, or S. Yeah. It's about 20 gigabytes in size, and compared to the data I collected with Tesla Radar, it has a hit rate of 98.7%. What I also did, it was about Christmas when I discovered that VIN identifier, and I had to do in Berlin, so I took my antenna and my new tripod and mounted in the car, and I was really curious what I was going to find when driving around in that Gigafactory 4 in Berlin plant. So it was not possible, of course, to get very close, but the antenna worked quite well. So that's the route I took. And of course, I found a lot of VINs of research prototypes that any car manufacturer has in order to do crash tests and so on. So I found a lot of those. But I also found a lot of Bluetooth low energy addresses that seem to belong to internal, like, car lifting equipment. And I'm pretty sure, even though you're far away, and if you get the manual of these car lifters, you could interfere with them and probably cause damage. And then the whole Tesla BLE thing came along, and that's what I have a video for. So friends were helping me, so we did that in GTA style. Want to see the video? All right. Please don't mind the audio. It comes via microphone. All right. It's very low. So what that is, somebody parks his car in this case, on a parking lot at a shopping center, exiting the car, and does the shopping. Then, of course, there's an evil guy, as always, with a laptop, and an assistant. So the victim goes, drinks some coffee, and one of the two Raspberry Pis is in this pocket, the other Raspberry Pi, which is connected via VPN together with the first one, is at the attacker's side. And now the connection is made, right? And the Bluetooth relay is up and running, and it's repossession, right? And the car will unlock, and there's no pin to drive, a feature that Tesla recommends to be set, and it's possible to drive away. So. Thank you. I said earlier, there's a very good video, another video that the NCC group published. It's very descriptive, very well documented, so you will find a lot of how the whole process would work. I tried to do that in the commentary. The link for that is on YouTube or on the web page as well. And this is the money shot. All right, so first video. So I was talking about that as well with Tesla. So we had a mail going on. So they do have a bug bounty program, and they are really reluctant in admitting any things what they might have done wrong. I think my audio still runs here. Yeah, I have to stop it. So talking about them, about that relay attack in, I believe it was August in 21, they acknowledged that fact and said, yeah, relay is possible, it's a known limitation, we are not going to change a lot about that, people should use pin to drive, which would not hinder people from unlocking your car and stealing stuff from it, by the way. So Pwn to Own 2 weeks ago in Vancouver also said, we're not interested in relay attacks, so out of scope, sorry. So, I'm not sure, yeah. I did another Twitter poll. This time I wanted to know how many people would use pin to drive, right? As Tesla says, everybody should use it. And turns out only 29% use pin to drive. And this was a poll from April 10th this year. So hopefully this changed a little bit. So that means like 2 out of 3 cars can be driven away. Relay attack is not relay attack. So when Tesla says, or Pwn to Own says, we're not interested in relay attacks, this is like manifold. Because to the one hand, there's this very dumb repeating attack where you just sniff off the RF signal from the victim and replicate that at the vehicle side. So this is pretty dumb, and it's also having its limitation, for example, range, because the Bluetooth protocol, even though it's BLE, which is a little more relaxed as for timing, does have some timeouts which would be triggered by a larger range. So what this man-in-the-middle relay attack does, it just gets the messages and replicates the messages. So that would allow a way higher range between the victim and the car. And again, in the slides, this will be complete. There's another Raspberry Pi to the other side, and in this case I used the GetHacker framework in order to do the relay. And it allowed me not only to forward messages, but also to inspect them and also to inject new messages that might make sense in some situation. And just for the fun of it, so this would be a possible scenario. Just imagine you sit in the plane, you have your assistant in the parking lot of the airport, and this guy right in front of you just plays with his mobile and has the Tesla up on it, and you're able to relay that whole messaging over your on-flight Wi-Fi, and your accomplice has access to the vehicle for hours and maybe drive it away. So how does that work? Inspecting the whole message passing back and forth, turned out Tesla is using something called protocol buffers. At the time, that was new to me. Easily explained, it's a kind of binary JSON, and it's a perfect match for the limited bandwidth with BLE. So really good engineering, really good thought, I believe. And this VCSAC protocol defines the interaction between the user and or the security devices and the vehicle. And given from the message names, there's some use cases this protocol is used for. It's, of course, for phone key, for the key fob, but also for the tire pressure measurement system, and maybe also used for the back-end communication. It got introduced in April 2018 in app version 3. And back then, the VCSAC protocol definition, its files called a protobuf. They do have usually a .proto extension. It was really easy to pull these out using the PBTK tool. Now, the current app version 4 uses Square, which is an alternative implementation by Wire. No, sorry, the product is called Wire, and it's by Square, and it has a very similar output to the original Google protobuf, but is more open source. So it became a little bit harder to extract the VCSAC protocol from the APK. And now with app version 4.9.0, this even got a little more complicated since they started obfuscating that VCSAC part as well. Yeah, there's a little specs. So the latest version I was able to extract has 77 messages and 45 enums. And of course, you can't read that. The blue squares I colored, these are the messages and enums that are referred to in the BLE subsystem of the Tesla app. So these were the interesting bits to look at in order to find out about the inner functions of that BLE VCSAC protocol. So here's the exact UUIDs for the characteristics. So there's the service UUID, the characteristic to vehicle, which you would write to, and the characteristic from vehicle, where you would subscribe and read from. And what you then would get is like messages like the one here with the 004. That's a serialized protobuf message with an addition. So the green part is a size header which is not part of the protobuf, but Tesla implemented that. And I know what you're thinking. You could maybe play with that and change the length, but turns out this is an optional header. They're not using it, so if you leave that out, the message is understood anyway. So if you have the Prodoc tool, which is used for protobuf, you can use the VCSEC archive, and there's 2 scripts with it. I put that all on GitHub with all the extracted protobuf definitions. So once you get one of these messages off the air, you can transcribe it into a human readable form that helps you understand what's going on. And of course, there's cryptographic keys in the game, right? It would be easy if you just talked to the car and said, please unlock, and it would unlock. Of course not. And you have to have a key pair where the public part of that key is known to the vehicle, and this making this public key known to the vehicle, this process is called whitelisting. So if you wanted to do that on your command shell, you would use the following program and generate a ECC key pair with the prime 256 version 1 curve. And of course, during the whole process, there is a shared secret established with the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. This is 128-bit long. And it's used for authentication and encryption. So how does the whitelisting work? No, sorry, not yet. So in order to whitelist a new key, you would have to have a key that is capable of whitelisting new keys. So the standard NFC keycard has this permission, or this role. Nowadays, they're not using permissions as a term, but a group of permissions which is defined by a role. So if you are having a key with the owner role, you can enroll up to 19 keys in a vehicle. This is a hard limit. There's a permission called fleet management. I believe that if you have the same key for multiple vehicles, this is something you would use there. The whitelisted keys are referenced with the key ID, and the key ID is SHA-1 over the public key, but only the first 4 bytes of it. So, of course, you can ask the vehicle and ask it, how many keys do you have whitelisted? And the very first key would always be the service key, which most likely is the NFC. And you would see like all the other keys, which in turn you can get more information on it. So you can ask the car also like in an unencrypted, unprotected message. So tell me more about that key with this and this ID. And it would come back to you and say, see, this is the key, this is its public key part, and that's the role. So as said, the first one is always the service one. And interesting enough, there's also this token, which will be important later on. So another key example, this time for an NFC card. This is how this looks, very much like the service key. So I assume the service key is an NFC card, which is pretty mighty, and you may want to have that. And this is an example for a phone key. So it has a form factor, it says it's an Android device, and a difference to the NFC cards is that further down here in the session info, it also has a counter. Oops. It also has a counter. And this is a key fob, also having a counter. So everything that allows passive entry has a counter. Roles and permissions. So I said earlier that nowadays roles define groups of permissions. There's a total of 9 permissions. The service role has it all, but the NFC keycard just has 4 or 5 of them, or 6, it may add and remove keys from the whitelist and do the local unlock, local drive, remote unlock, remote drive. These 2 are for the summon feature. These are the permissions. And now we get to the interesting part. So there is message types called from VCSEC. This is all the stuff that comes from the vehicle. Its most frequent messages are vehicle status, authentication request, and common status. But as you can see here, and it's too small to read, but you can figure it out in the VCSEC archive on GitHub, there's a lot of messages, but interesting enough, none of the messages coming via from VCSEC do have any kind of protection cryptographically. So in the whole trust model, and that's a thing I will criticize a little later as well, the car is always the entity with all the power. So that's very unbalanced and it could be exploited. So that's an example from VCSEC message, and it's an authentication request that comes with a token, which is used as a kind of challenge. So you cannot just record an authentication response in this case and replay it later on. There is command status, which you get as a confirmation. Once you send a command, you will get that as a confirmation that everything worked. And this is also a vehicle status, in this case indicating that the vehicle is locked. And there's the equivalent for the opposite direction. So there's this message type called toVCSEC, and all the messages that are sent to the vehicle are kind of embedded into this. And there's 2 different kinds, the unsigned message and the signed message. And this is where the crypto gets important. And unsigned messages are, to the one hand, used for messages without any direct security context. So for example, give me the whitelist of keys, even though this might be a little bit security relevant. This is an unsigned message which is just sent there. And of course it's used as a containing format for signed messages where the unsigned message is encrypted and embedded into a signed message. And it's used, these messages are used for a direct security context, and as said, is used for encapsulating messages. What crypto is used is the Galois counter mode with associated data, and it's best known from the SSH protocol. It prevents known plaintext attacks since there's some kind of GMAC. And also, because of that challenge data in the token, it also prevents replay attacks. And it has a counter which always increases, so also there you have that rolling code. It's a little bit different from key fobs you might know in other cars, so this counter can be requested from the car, so it's not a secret. There's a difference in the implementation. So the original version of the GCM structure is that the invocation counter or this crypto counter is 8 bytes long and not only 4 bytes as in the case for Tesla. Tesla uses the standard 16 octets as a length for the GMAC. And there's this token information which is 20 bytes long. So there's different ways of signing a message. The first one would be if a command initiating from the phone is sent, like unlock the door. There would be a signature type AES, so just an encryption without any additional data. But for anything that comes from the car, like as an authentication request, will come with that token, which in the response has to be incorporated, so this signature would be like the GCM underscore token 1 for this to work. And the third type of signature is used when you enroll a new key. This is where you send like the command, please enroll key, but the signature type would be of present key, implying that you would have to have a valid key and you swipe it, and that authorizes that step. So here's a few more things I will skip over quickly since I have to have an eye on the time. There's also something like an alert informing the device that some sensor readout did not really compute. So I was using one Raspberry Pi in the trunk of my car, and it had a really powerful radio on it. So it was triggering that alert because all the different readouts from the RSSI sensors at the left, right, rear, and center were very disturbing, maybe. I don't know. The car did not unlock. So I fixed that by replacing that very powerful radio on the Raspberry Pi with just a standard class 3 Bluetooth dongle. Yeah, there's another alert. There is the action enum. Oh, sorry, wrong title. This is the key form factors, so all available or defined form factors. So there's quite a few versions of the key fob. Signed message example. The important bit here is that it's really hard to guess what's in there in that protobuf message as bytes, because that's encrypted. And it's really hard to find out what has to go in there in order for this whole thing to work. And I succeeded, and I did a whole working VCSec client, as you will see in a second. All right. There is this possible replay attack. As I said, this token used in authentication requests, which kind of is a challenge that I have to respond to by using it correctly in my crypto. This doesn't change a lot. So it would enable an attacker to take that token information from the car, which freely it's telling you that without a big secret, and you use that, you spoof the vehicle, you talk to the owner's phone, and get a few authentication responses with that token, which you then, as a canned response, and just play to the car, and maybe you need 5 of them in order to start the car and drive off. So that should work. And then there was a key drop attack, so again impersonating the car, just claiming that the key that has been used for that crypto operation is not on the whitelist. So what happened in earlier versions of that phone key app, it just deleted the key and the user was locked out. And that's some of the things that got fixed. And Tesla is working on a kind of mitigation for the relay attack. They do have something called IMU state, which is inertia measuring unit. So the IMU, that's a common abbreviation in the automotive industry. But that just tells the car that the phone just moved. And guess what? It's an unsigned message, and that can be injected in every communication. So again, there's no point in using it that way. So, of course, it's possible to get a lot of information from the car without any crypto. You can enumerate the keys. You can tell what key gets used a lot. You can tell what device types the owner of the car is using, and so on. So that might be some information over time that's worth collecting. And also the service key ID, which I first thought would give me a clue on the software version on the car, but turns out there's 2 different key IDs only, and they keep alternating. So maybe this is something region specific. Maybe these key IDs for the service key differ in Canada. I haven't checked that. So, but here we get to the point. So if you wanted to whitelist a new key, so you would generate a key pair, of course, and the app does it the way that you have, of course, to log into your Tesla account. And the Tesla account has an owner API, which you use your token on. So it's all online. You get an API token with your sign-in. You ask at the owner API, what are the cars that belong to me? And you get a list of VIN numbers. And as said earlier, you can generate that VIN identifier and find the right vehicle in your proximity where you would connect to and do the whole whitelisting process. You send information, get ephemeral public key, so that's like the public key of the vehicle. Then you send the information, get me all the whitelisting. You receive the number of whitelisted keys. You generate a whitelist operation. You pack everything in that's required according to the protocol. This is, of course, your public key. And you send that as a signed message with the signature type present key, right? And then you tap the NFC card on the fast share plate or the B pillar, and you're done. You get another whitelist operation status. You will ask for the number of enrolled keys, and you just make sure that your newly generated key ID is in the list, and you know you're set. You can start using your key. And that's another important information in this context. It got introduced in August 21, and there's also a link to that. And it's a convenience feature. And it says, whenever you use your NFC key card in order to unlock your car, there will be kind of a time interval where you just can start the car, because tapping it again would just be a put off for many users maybe. And this timer runs for 130 seconds, I figured that out, and it allows starting a car, but it also allows whitelisting a key. And knowing that this whole VIN from the owner API does not even have to do something with the whitelisting process, allows anyone with a rogue VCSEC client to do a whitelisting with any car where an NFC card is tapped for 130 seconds after the tap. So there's another video. Want to see it? That's a premiere. Please, again, I'd like to apologize for the audio. So the owner of the car unlocks the car with the NFC card, gets in, and as you see in the lower hand right corner, the authorization timer is started. Now the bad guy in the left lower corner has a rogue VCSEC client. In this case, it's an evil version of the Tesla Key app, which is used to enroll a key. The owner drives away. The car already has a new whitelisted key in it. Later that day, the hacker returns with that rogue VCSEC app and unlocks the car. No active PIN, the attacker can drive away. So using the NFC card, as we know, is very uncommon. But there's some situations where the key card use is very common. So valet parking, garage situations, you just hand away your NFC card. And of course, a hacker can provoke the use of the NFC key card by just using a jammer, jamming the 2.4 gigahertz band, and the whole phone thing won't work. So that's about it. That's the authorization timer attack. That, by the way, also works when you lock your car and walk away, 130 seconds. Right. So what about the key fob, you might ask? It's research in progress. There is a message class used for the key fob. It's usually shorter messages, but for some reason the key fob wouldn't talk to me. But I will look into that a little more. I did some tools. They're available on GitHub. One tool is called Tempera. It's a VCSEC client that you can use for your Tesla only, please, and it allows key enumeration and decoding and encoding of VCSEC messages. I probably do a video on this, just presenting the easy options. Then, as said, there's this VCSEC archive with all the extracted protofiles and 2 shell scripts allowing you to de- and encode these messages. Then there's a wrapper for the API that allows you to decode or to transfer that 8-byte hex code back to a bin. And then there's a Tesla key. It's mainly for Tesla owners, which is a replacement for the existing Android app part of the phone key, and would always do a plausibility check and check whether an unlock event or an authorization request is plausible. So if you're sleeping at night and connected to the charger, why should your phone unlock your car, right? So this is part of this app and will be most likely released in Q3 of 2022. So the conclusion, relay attacks are possible, pin-to-drive should always be used and should, in my opinion, be promoted way better by Tesla. And the Tesla phone key at the moment really talks to anyone. The NFC key card has an issue with the authorization timer, which of course got introduced as a user experience feature. And the app, of course, the online and offline rearms are not connected, so it would make sense if you whitelisted a new key, you would have to present proof that you also have access to your Tesla account. So VCSEC does not stand, and that's really what I thought, for vehicle control security. It does stand for vehicle control secondary, though. And as said, again, convenience and user experience trumps the security. The phone key cannot easily be deactivated. Authorization timer is an issue. Yeah, credits to Slavomir for the great Gattaca tool, for Sandeep Mistry, he's from this area of Canada. He did like the groundwork for Gattaca. Of course, the developer of JDX, and there's Lex Naston, which I discovered in April, has a very similar documentation about that Tesla Bluetooth API on the page I listed there. But it's not up to date anymore. So what do you think? Phone as a key, NFC card, safe to use, yes or no? Is it already too late? There's something called Tesla Flex, a key card implant. So once you have that, you have to chop off your hand now, or just remove that key from the list, whatever is more convenient to you. And it's sold out, so obviously there's quite a few people using that. So if you have questions, I think we have a few minutes left. The slides are already on the page listed there. Next talk will be in Germany at the Troopers Conference, and in 1 or 2 weeks there will be a podcast episode from the Hacker Mind, where there's a little more background about the research. All right, thank you very much. Yeah. Just take it, and also, so everybody who has a question gets a sticker. sticker and a motor ball. So is there questions? Right.
I really just wanted the sticker. Anyway, would it be possible for them to simply introduce something like time of flight measurement to be able to mitigate the so big that it wouldn't be possible to do like a VPN relay from your airplane?
Yeah, the question was whether the timing in the protocol should be a little more snug so that the delay introduced by a VPN would disable the unlock process, right? That's a question. And I think there is a timer like that, but it's really generous. So I tested that over a laggy VPN connection, and I had to repeatedly send the same message, but eventually it got through. So there seems to be a timer, but that's too generous. Another question?
Hey, great talk. What are the legal implications for Tesla? Because if I have valuables in the car, there are no legal implications for them if someone steals those valuables?
Legal implication. So I'm not really sure if it's a good idea to steal a vehicle with 9 cameras in it. It's a different question. I don't know if there's legal implications once a car gets stolen by exploiting one of these very obvious methods. I don't know how Tesla would react to that. Maybe that's why Tesla is getting into the insurance game, just to maybe find a solution there. Is that answering your question?
I was looking for, do they have something in the fine print saying that if you don't enable pin the camera,
Pin to drive? Uh-huh.
then we are not liable for your value?
I haven't seen that in the fine print, but I'm not good with reading fine print.
Just call OpenSSL with basically generating a couple of key and you're already done.
You have to get the right key type, so it has to be ECC prime 265, that curve, and then you have the key pair, and that's random. It's not specific to Tesla in any way. You just have to use the public key for the whitelisting process, and you're done.
Yeah, but exactly. They don't verify that the private key that maybe you have used and you used to decrypt the messages like generated actually tied to your account.
I think it would be difficult to assign a private key beforehand, because the idea is I have a new key card which has a private key on there already and I enroll it. So I think it would be really awkward to have all these private keys stored somewhere in order for the enrollment process. I think, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, yeah, but basically when we have like a key in like Windows, for example, we always sign that the private key has been generated by someone that is out there.
Like a KPI, abbreviation. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, like a CA that would have like...
yes, a root certificate or something that emits the private key, and like basically you know that the private key is emitted by a trusted root. This doesn't happen even in the Tesla.
Yeah,
like
that would be a mitigation, but that is not in use. So I think because there's a concept called cloud key, it's one of the form factors for keys, and this cloud key allows third parties, I believe, to also generate key pairs that are accepted at the car. So in Tesla's defense a little bit, I think they left that part very open in order to be more flexible for other use cases.
I see. So basically for generating a fake NFC key, I just need to generate a private key. Done.
Right. You're welcome. another question over there. Is that? Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of work by other vehicle manufacturers to leverage Bluetooth and soft keys and the like. Have you seen an increase in interest, eagerness from other vehicle manufacturers to work with you to better understand these attacks? There's a lot more inertia with other vehicle manufacturers as compared to Tesla. Tesla can move pretty fast, but I'm just curious about your experience with other vehicle manufacturers on this point.
So I do not have a lot of first-hand experience with that. So I know, of course, that a lot of car manufacturers are looking at Tesla and try to imitate the new innovative stuff from them. And I know that BMW in Germany, for example, is also having an app for quite a long time already. But I heard that they also are into this Bluetooth Low Energy idea for keyless Go. But that's just hearsay.
Sorry if you mentioned it, but the 130-second timeout and the registration of the key, did you report that to Tesla, and what was their reaction?
Sorry, can you say it again?
All right, I'll just project. The 130-second timeout issue, did you report it to Tesla, and what was their reaction?
According, I did not report this to Tesla because in the past I just had a really bad experience with reporting stuff to Tesla. So, and since this is optional, I just went with that since this is public information. So there's a news report on that convenience feature that came with an update. So it's not only required that you tap the middle console, you can also tap the B pillar. That's just another convenience thing that made things worse. Tesla knows that, and there's no way they're not knowing that the online and offline world for the key enrollment are pretty much not connected. So.
Very strange, because that seems like unquestionably a vulnerability.
Sorry?
It's strange, because that seems to be unquestionably a vulnerability.
Yeah, I was assuming that too. So I used Frida to unpin the certificate to be able to read what kind of tokens are passed back and forth. But none of the tokens I saw in this online communication when I was logging into my account was later on used in the whole Bluetooth Low Energy stuff. So really strange. Yeah.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Great talk. I had a quick question about, you had the VCSec message graph, and you had some of the nodes painted based on use. I was just curious what tool or script you used to generate that.
So once you have the proto file, so the protocol definition, you can use the ProTalk compiler and transform that into different output formats, for example, into a Python class. But also you can use it to generate UML, planned UML in this case, so you get the whole tree of messages and enums, and then I used a script that just parsed for the class names and colored them. So this is a own little script.
Thanks. Interesting talk. Elaborate a bit more on the plausibility checks that you're doing in your own app. I'm over here.
Oh, you're over here. Can you repeat your question,
Yeah.
please?
Can you
elaborate a bit on the plausibility checks?
Can you please stand up so you are in line of sight of the...
can you elaborate a bit more on the plausibility checks of your application?
All right. So as said, the trust model with Tesla is the car is the sovereign. So it does all the decisions related to security, which in a way is a little bit stupid because your own phone with the Tesla app on it should also be trusted. So the idea is having an app that only would talk back to a potential car asking it for authorization if some of other sensor readouts fit the situation. So for now, this is the pedometer. Did the user carrying the phone walk within the last 10 seconds? So this would be a strong indicator that it is okay. And then, of course, being on a charger, very unlikely when you're walking up to your car, but that's something you can configure. Another thing would be the Wi-Fi connectivity. Are you connected to your home or office Wi-Fi, which would not be available at your parking lot? Another indication. And of course, GPS is also a very strong indication, right? It's not always available, but the app will have some like soft matching as well. So like having like 3 plausibility criteria and just 2 of them have to match, something around that. So this what is in plan. That was about timing for the relay. Was that a similar question like the one before? I just did not understand the whole question, I'm sorry.
No, for the protocol, it takes time for the car to reply to your phone. And you have to play farther away, so it would
All
take
right.
way longer.
Just to see if it's plausible based on that round trip time. I think that's also the reason that Tesla uses such a generous time frame for that, because BLE is laggy and it is okay for BLE to be laggy, and I think to really put really close timing on that protocol-based message is not going to cut it. So I think that's a little bit too flaky for that. Oh, another question. Oh,
all right.
Really a lot of questions.
This is Han from NCC Group, so you'd mentioned me in the talk. When I was messing with this, I noticed, cutting out, I noticed that sometimes the Tesla app will check the GPS location of the user, background location enabled. Now, this wasn't preventing me from actually carrying out the attack, but I wonder if you looked into why the Tesla app is looking at the location.
Are you Sultan? Yes. Yeah, hi. Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure.
I didn't fully get it. Sorry.
So when I was messing with the Tesla app, I saw that sometimes the app look at the GPS location of the user in the background if the user had background location permission enabled for the app.
Okay.
This wasn't preventing you from carrying a real attack. I wonder if you saw anything in the Tesla app actually making use of this location security.
So the question is that Sultan, who did the work for the NCC group and also published that video 2 weeks ago, asks that, or says that he observed that the app would request the user's location in the background, and if this location information was used later on for making sense of an unlock event. So I hope I repeated that question correctly, and the answer is no, I did not see any indication for that. The only indication I saw that this kind of IMU events were sent back and forth, so like the phone would say, I've been moved, and I think it's something like 50 seconds that this status is active, and then it would send, I'm not moving, preventing a very basic relay attack that is like the most usual one. Once you get home, put your phone on the drawer and have it sit there. I think that would be a mitigation for just this situation. But as said, these messages can be injected, so you can always, as an attacker, pretend that the phone has moved. So, done.
Strangely enough, on the iOS version of the app, at least I was able to leave the phone sitting on a table for half an hour, and still relay.
Oh, really? We have to talk, that's for sure. Sultan observed that the iOS app would keep on talking even though it's been lying there for an hour. So there's also a lazy implementation there, maybe. All right, thank you very much. If you have more questions, you find me.